I told my two daughters that I had stage 3 cancer and had sold everything to pay for treatment. My successful daughter placed a $100 bill on the table and told me to take care of myself. My youngest daughter, who earns $15 an hour at a small diner, gave me her only bed and worked herself to exhaustion. That night, when I saw her curled up on the floor, I called my lawyer. 1 week later, at a charity gala beneath crystal chandeliers, the truth lit up the screens, and $105 million didn't just change hands, it changed the very definition of family. I'm truly grateful you're here with me today. Before we go any further, tell me where you're listening from. What city? What country I love, seeing how far these stories travel and knowing who's on the other side of the screen. And if this story touches something personal for you, don't stay silent. Share a thought in the comments. I read more than you think. Please remember, while parts of this story are dramatized for storytelling and reflection, any similarities to real people or places are purely coincidental. What matters most is the lesson behind it. The dining table could seat 12, but tonight only one chair was occupied. I sat at the head of my Charleston mansion, $3.2 million of historic brick and wrought iron 18-foot ceilings, and a view of the Battery with a plate of reheated shrimp and grits going cold. 58 years old, 6 years a widow. $105 million in real estate holdings built from nothing but sweat and stubborn refusal to quit. But tonight I was just a mother waiting for the phone to ring. It did at 7:43 p.m. Mom, I need to talk to you. Not how are you? Not I miss you. Just straight to business. That was Rachel, my eldest, 33, a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, with a practice that pulled in over $2 million a year. Of course, sweetheart. What's going on? We're expanding. There's a property on Rodeo Drive, perfect location right next to the flagship Gucci store. But we need to move fast. $400,000 for the down payment. I set down my fork. $400,000. That's quite an investment, I said carefully. I know, but Mark ran the numbers. We'll triple revenue in 2 years. The space is zoned for surgical suites. We could add 2 more surgeons to the practice. Her voice was bright, confident, already counting future dollars. Can you wire it by Friday? We're competing with 2 other bidders. I looked at the photos on the mantle. Rachel in her white coat at Johns Hopkins graduation. Then another 2 years later at Yale for her residency. I'd paid $500,000 for that education, every penny, every year, never once asking for gratitude. Let me think about it, I said. Mom, I really need an answer. This is time sensitive. Not, how have you been? Not, are you eating enough? Not, do you need anything? Just time sensitive. I'll call you back tomorrow, I told her. She sighed, the kind that said I was being difficult, and hung up. The silence rushed back in. I walked to the mantel and picked up the second photo. Anna, my youngest, 28, grinning in her Jerry's Diner uniform, hair pulled back in a ponytail, that smile that could light up a room even when she was exhausted. I'd paid $28,000 for her community college tuition. Not because I didn't have more, because by the time Anna was college-aged, the recession had hit and I was rebuilding. She'd been accepted to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. Full scholarship. Her dream school. The letter had come on a Tuesday in April, 10 years ago now. She'd cried when she opened it. Then she'd turned it down. Mom, I can't let you go into debt for my dreams, she'd said at 18, holding that acceptance letter like it was made of glass. The scholarship covers tuition, but rent in Paris, food books. I'll stay here. I'll be fine. And she was fine. She served coffee and burgers at Jerry's for $15 an hour and saved every penny, dreaming of opening her own restaurant someday. A little place in Charleston. Nothing fancy, just good food, fair prices, and a table for anyone who needed one. Anna called every Thursday, just to talk, to ask about my garden, whether the magnolias were blooming, whether I'd been eating enough. Rachel called when she needed something. I set the photo down and returned to my cold dinner, but I couldn't eat. My husband's voice echoed the last real conversation before the illness took everything. Early June, 6 years ago. He'd been in hospice at home in the bedroom upstairs that overlooked the garden. Elizabeth, he'd said, his hand weak in mine. You gave them everything, but you never tested whether they learned to give back. They're good girls, I'd protested. They're untested, he'd corrected gently. And one day you'll need to know, not for your sake, for theirs. I hadn't understood then. But tonight, staring at that empty table at the photos of two daughters who'd taken such different paths, a question burned. If I lost everything tomorrow, which one would stand by me? Not the one with the Beverly Hills practice and the $400,000 expansion plans. Not the one who'd gotten $500,000 in education and couldn't spare time to ask how I was. The one who called every week. The one who'd sacrificed Paris because she didn't want me to sacrifice more. Or would I be wrong? My husband had warned me. He'd said, "You gave them everything, but you never tested whether they learned to give back." Tonight I made a decision. I had a plan. A terrible, necessary plan. 3 days later, the phone rang at exactly 7 p.m. Thursday, like clockwork. "Mom, how was your week?" Not Rachel, Anna. I sank into the kitchen chair, relief flooding through me like warm water. "Hi, sweetheart." It was quiet. "Did you eat enough? You always forget when you're working." Her voice carried that gentle concern I'd come to crave like oxygen. "And how's the magnolia garden? Did the new tree take root?" We talked for 40 minutes. About soil, pH, and whether I should add more mulch. About the hummingbirds that had returned to the feeder. About the leak in my bathroom that I kept meaning to call a plumber about. "Mom, you can't just ignore it. Water damage gets expensive." She laughed. "I know a guy from the diner. He does side work. Want me to send him over?" "I can afford a plumber, honey." "I know. But why pay triple when Jerry's brother-in-law will do it for cost?" That was Anna, always thinking, always caring. Rachel hadn't called back. Not about the $400,000. Not to ask if I was alive. After Anna hung up, promising to call again next Thursday, I sat in the growing darkness of my kitchen, staring at the phone. 6 years ago on a Thursday, much like this one, I'd sat in this same chair making a very different kind of call. 17 calls to be exact. John had been in hospice care in our bedroom upstairs. The illness had spread faster than anyone predicted. The doctor said we had days, maybe a week. I'd called Rachel that morning. "Honey, you need to come home, now." "Mom, I'm at the Medical Association Gala in Los Angeles. Do you know how many connections I'm making here? This could change my entire practice." "Your father is leaving us." A pause. "Then I'll try to get a flight tomorrow." Tomorrow became the day after, then the day after that. She'd texted instead, "Can't leave yet, Mom. Important clients. Dad understands." But he didn't understand. None of us did. John passed on a Tuesday morning in early June with me holding one hand and Anna holding the other. Our youngest had requested unpaid leave from the diner 11 nights she'd spent sleeping in the chair beside his bed, waking every time he stirred. Rachel arrived on Friday, 3 days too late. She'd cried at the funeral, real tears, but they couldn't undo her absence. The night before John passed, when he could still speak, he'd called Anna close. I'd watched from the doorway as he pressed something into her hands, a worn leather notebook I'd never seen before. "What is it, Dad?" Anna had whispered. "Recipes. Your grandmother's. Mine. Your mom's." His voice had been barely audible. "The real inheritance. Not money. This." I'd looked through it later. Shrimp and grits with his mother's secret spice blend, she-crab soup the way his grandmother made it, pecan pie with extra bourbon. On the last page in John's careful handwriting, "Anna, you already know what wealth means. Don't let them teach you otherwise." Not anyone. Them. He'd known, even then. Tonight I unlocked the safe in my study where I'd kept that notebook for 6 years. The leather was soft under my fingers, the pages yellowed at the edges. I traced John's handwriting, the loops and slants I'd recognize anywhere. Then I set it down and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before I typed, "How to fake terminal illness." The search results flooded the screen. Articles about insurance fraud, medical ethics violations, people who destroyed their lives with lies. I clicked on one, then another. By midnight, I had a list of symptoms, a timeline, a plan that made my stomach turn even as I wrote it down. John's voice echoed in my memory. "You never tested whether they learned to give back." This was the test, the terrible necessary test. I closed the laptop and picked up my phone. My finger hovered over Charles Morrison's name, John's best friend, our family attorney, the only person I trusted with something this dangerous. The next morning I called him. 2 days later, I sat across from Charles Morrison in his law office on Broad Street. The room smelled of old leather and coffee. Charles, 60 years old, silver-haired, with John's same steady gaze, leaned back in his chair and studied me like I'd just confessed to a felony. "You want a fake terminal illness?" he said slowly. "To test your daughters." "Yes." "Elizabeth." He set down his reading glasses. "This is dangerous. What if Anna sacrifices too much? What if you can't stop it in time? Then I'll know when to stop." He stood and walked to the window overlooking the historic district. Church steeples rose against the May sky. After a long silence, he turned back. "I'll help you, but only with 3 conditions." I leaned forward. 1, no actual harm to your health. You see a real doctor. We document everything. Agreed. 2, if Anna crosses into unsafe territory financially, physically, emotionally, we end this immediately. No exceptions. Agreed. 3, I retain the right to intervene at any point. If I think you're going too far, I pull the plug. I met his eyes. "You sound like John." "That's because he made me promise to protect you from yourself." His voice softened. "Even if that meant protecting you from your own plans." We shook hands. Over the next 8 days, Charles and I built my new identity. Not Elizabeth Hayes, real estate mogul, but Elizabeth Hayes, desperate woman with nothing left to lose. Day 1. Charles arranged an appointment with Dr. Richard Morrison, an oncologist and old friend. I went in for a real examination, real CT scan, real tests. The diagnosis came back benign ovarian cyst. Harmless, treatable. The bills, however, were real. $2,145 for imaging, $3,890 for labs, $2,330 for consultations. Total $8,365. Charles altered the diagnostic report, changed benign cyst to stage 3 ovarian malignancy. I stared at the falsified document. "This feels wrong. It should," Charles said quietly, "but if you're going to do this, do it right. Half-truths won't test anything." Days 2 through 4, I went to Goodwill on King Street and bought a wardrobe of worn clothes. Faded jeans with frayed hems, oversized sweaters with pulled threads, shoes with cracked soles. The cashier rang up my purchases, $47 total. I paid cash and wondered if Anna had ever shopped here. Day 5, I cut my hair short at a budget salon. Not the elegant bob I'd worn for years, but a choppy, uneven style that looked like I'd done it myself. "Rough week," the stylist asked sympathetically. "You could say that." Days 6 and 7. Makeup lessons in reverse. I learned to make my skin look sallow, to hollow my cheeks with shadow, to create the appearance of someone losing a battle. Day 8. Charles presented me with foreclosure documents, fake but disturbingly authentic. Notices stating that 12 of my properties were being seized to cover medical expenses. "Where did you get these?" I asked. "You don't want to know." He wasn't wrong. On the morning of May 20th, I stood before my bedroom mirror. The woman staring back wasn't me. Thin hair, pale skin, clothes that hung loose on a frame that hadn't actually lost weight but looked like it had. Eyes that carried a fear I didn't have to fake because I was terrified of what I was about to do. I picked up my phone and took a photo, sent it to Charles with 2 words, "I'm ready." His response came immediately. "God help us both." I packed a small bag. Not the designer luggage I usually traveled with, but a battered duffel I'd bought at the thrift store. Inside, the fake medical documents, the foreclosure notices, 1 change of clothes, and John's notebook. I couldn't leave that behind. On May 21st, I boarded a plane to Los Angeles. I was going to see my daughter, the plastic surgeon who'd spent her life fixing faces, making people beautiful for a price. Let's see if she could fix this. The heat hit me the moment I stepped off the plane at LAX. Dry California heat that made my thrift store clothes cling to my back. I adjusted my worn duffel bag and headed for ground transportation. No taxi. I took the Metro bus, $1.75 toward Beverly Hills. The bus was half empty. I sat beside a man who carried everything he owned in 2 plastic bags. "Visiting someone?" he asked. "My daughter." His weathered face softened. "That's nice. My daughter's a lawyer in New York, big firm." He stared out the window. "Haven't heard from her in 6 years. My chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. Successful people don't have time for this. He gestured at himself. I reached over and squeezed his hand. His fingers trembled slightly. I'm Louise, he said. Elizabeth. When I got off at my stop, he nodded. I nodded back. I wondered if Rachel would see her future in his eyes the way I'd seen mine. Beverly Hills was everything I'd imagined. Clean sidewalks, palm trees, cars worth more than houses. Rachel's office stood on Rodeo Drive, a 14-story glass tower. The sign read, Dr. Rachel Hayes, MD Aesthetic and Reconstructive Surgery. I positioned myself across the street and watched through floor-to-ceiling windows. White marble lobby, crystal chandeliers, 4 receptionists in black Armani suits, clients in Chanel and Rolex watches moving through like they owned the world. A price board caught my eye. Facelift, $35,000. Rhinoplasty, $18,000. Lip enhancement, $2,500. I touched the fake medical bills in my bag. $8,365. Rachel charged more for lip filler than my entire fabricated crisis. At 5:30, she emerged. 33 years old. Expensive blonde hair. Valentino dress I'd seen in magazines, $6,800. Red-soled Louboutin heels clicking against marble. She smiled at a client practiced professional, but her eyes were cold. I watched her glide through that space like royalty, touching shoulders, laughing, promising transformations. When had my little girl, the one who made mud pies in our Charleston garden, become this? By 7 p.m., the receptionists had left. The clients trickled away. Only the 14th floor remained lit. Rachel stepped outside alone. She pulled out a cigarette, a habit I didn't know she had, and lit it with a gold lighter leaning against the building. I stepped from the shadows. She didn't notice at first, too focused on her phone. Then I moved into the entrance light. She looked up. For 3 seconds, nothing. Her eyes passed over me like I was invisible. Then they snapped back. Her mouth opened. The cigarette fell. Mom. Disbelief, horror, maybe shame. I stood there in my Goodwill clothes, choppy hair, hollow cheeks. Everything I'd built for this moment. Hi, sweetheart. She stared at my face, my clothes, the duffel bag. What are you doing here? I stepped forward. I need to talk to you. She glanced back at the building, her pristine world, then at me. Mom, you look sick, I finished. I am. Her face went pale. For a moment, just a flash, I saw something real. Fear, concern. Then it disappeared behind that professional mask. Come inside, she said quietly, glancing around like she was checking if anyone saw us. Not out here. She held the glass door open. I walked through, into her world of marble and crystal and $35,000 promises. This was it, the first test. The waiting room smelled like lavender and money. Rachel pulled me past the empty reception desk through a hallway lined with before and after photos into her private office. Not because she was worried about me, because she was worried someone might see me. She closed the door. The office was all glass and chrome. A leather chair behind her desk, $4,000 if it was a dime. Diplomas on the wall, Johns Hopkins. Yale. Awards I'd never heard her mention. Sit, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I sat. She remained standing 6 feet away, arms crossed. What happened? Her voice was controlled, clinical. I told her the story Charles and I had prepared. I was diagnosed 2 months ago, stage 3. I kept my voice steady. The illness, it's advanced. Her face didn't change. I started treatment. That's why my hair... I touched my choppy cut. The bills are already at $8,365. Still nothing. I had to sell the properties, all of them, to pay for an experimental therapy program in Atlanta, $127,000. I pulled the fake documents from my bag, spread them on her pristine desk. I have nothing left, Rachel. I'm sleeping in my car. She glanced at the papers, didn't pick them up. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Not are you okay, not how can I help? Why didn't you tell me? Like this was an inconvenience I should have scheduled in advance. I didn't want to burden you, I said quietly, but I need help. Just $15,000. Alone. I'll pay you back when I sell the last property. 47 seconds of silence. I counted them. She walked to the window, looked out at Rodeo Drive below. The lights were coming on storefronts full of things nobody needed, but everyone wanted. Finally, she turned back. Mom. She opened her designer purse, Hermes probably 5 figures, and pulled out her wallet. Mark and I just invested $400,000 in the new spa location. Our cash flow is extremely tight right now. She extracted a single bill, $100, held it out to me. This should cover food for a few days. I stared at that bill. $100. I'd paid $500,000 for her education. Johns Hopkins undergrad, medical school, every textbook, every meal plan, every apartment. $500,000. $18.50 a day every day for 27 years. And she was handing me $100. There are shelters downtown. She continued setting the bill on the desk when I didn't take it. I can get you a list. Some of them are actually quite clean. I looked up at her, at my daughter, at the stranger in the Valentino dress. A shelter. Just temporarily, until you get back on your feet. She glanced at her Cartier watch. Mom, I have a dinner reservation at 8:30. Mark's waiting. She stood smoothing her dress, came around the desk and kissed my cheek the same professional peck she probably gave clients. Take care of yourself. She paused at the door, and maybe consider cutting back on the treatment if it's too expensive. Quality of life, you know. Sometimes prolonging things just makes it worse. She said it like she was suggesting I skip dessert. Cut back on treatment. Let yourself pass away so you don't inconvenience anyone with medical bills. I picked up the $100 bill, folded it carefully, put it in my pocket. Thank you, sweetheart. She smiled, relieved, probably that I wasn't going to make a scene. Of course. Let me know how you're doing, okay? She held the office door open. I walked out, past the before and after photos, past the empty reception desk, through the glass doors into the Los Angeles night. The air was still warm. The street was full of people going to expensive dinners, carrying shopping bags, laughing. I stood there for a moment, touching the $100 in my pocket. Then I walked toward the Greyhound station. My test had just begun. The bus left Los Angeles at 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday. $147 for a ticket. Nearly everything Rachel had given me, plus the few bills I'd tucked away before this started. 43 hours through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana. 43 hours to think about what I'd done, what I was doing. Hours 1 through 12, Arizona. I sat beside a woman named Maria, 52, with hands that showed decades of hard work. She was heading to Atlanta to see her mother. I clean houses in Phoenix, she told me as the desert rolled past. Been saving $200 a month for 10 years. Finally had enough for this trip. $200 a month, 10 years, $24,000 to see her mother. That's a long time to save, I said quietly. Some things are worth waiting for. She smiled. You visiting someone? My daughter. That's nice. I'm sure she'll be happy to see you. I thought about Rachel's Cartier watch, her suggestion that I cut back on treatment. Anna would do this, I thought. Anna would save $200 a month for 10 years if that's what it took. Hours 13 through 24, New Mexico/Texas. I couldn't sleep. The bus rocked. Other passengers dozed against windows, but I sat awake watching the desert stretch endlessly in every direction, like the distance between me and Rachel. I opened my phone and typed a note. Test number 1. Failed. Daughter who has everything gave $100. Will daughter who has nothing give more? I stared at those words until my eyes burned. Hours 25 through 36, Louisiana. We stopped in Baton Rouge at 4 a.m. The station was fluorescent bright and empty except for a few other passengers and a young woman behind the coffee counter. She looked about 19. I bought coffee, $2.50. The most expensive thing I'd purchased since I started pretending to be broke. She handed me the cup, then paused, studying my face. You okay, ma'am? I must have looked as exhausted as I felt. Just a long trip. She glanced around, then reached under the counter and pulled out a muffin. Set it beside my coffee. On the house, she whispered. You look like you need it. I stared at that muffin. This girl probably making minimum wage at 4 in the morning giving me free food because I looked like I needed kindness. Thank you, I managed. Back on the bus, I ate that muffin in the bathroom and cried. Hours 37 through 43, Charleston. The bus pulled into Charleston at 9:30 p.m. Thursday. Meeting Street Station. I stepped off into humidity that wrapped around me like a blanket. Home, my city. I didn't call a taxi. I couldn't. I was supposed to be someone who had nothing. So I walked 2.3 miles through downtown Charleston at night, past Rainbow Row, those famous colorful houses I'd photographed 1,000 times, past the Battery where the harbor stretched dark and endless, up toward King Street. My feet ached in my worn shoes, my duffel bag cut into my shoulder, but I needed this. I needed Anna to see me like this, desperate, exhausted with nothing. The streets were mostly empty, a few couples leaving restaurants, someone walking a dog. They passed me without looking. I wondered if this was what it felt like, to be invisible. By the time I reached King Street, my legs were trembling, but I kept walking, toward the diner, toward Anna, toward the real test. At 11:47 p.m., I stood outside Jerry's diner. Through the window, I could see her, my youngest daughter, 28 years old, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, white uniform with a name tag, carrying 3 plates balanced on her arms, smiling at customers like they were friends, not strangers paying for burgers. She looked tired, but happy. I watched her for one more moment, my daughter who'd turned down Paris to stay here, who called every Thursday, who gave free refills and extra napkins and probably listened to every customer's problems. Then I walked toward the door. The door chime rang when I pushed it open. Anna was pouring coffee at table 7. She turned and those blue eyes, John's eyes, went wide. "Mom!" The coffee pot slipped from her hands and shattered across the floor. She didn't care. She ran and wrapped her arms around me so tight I couldn't breathe. Not, "Why didn't you call?" Just, "You're freezing, you're soaking. What happened?" "Anna." "Jerry," she called. An older man emerged from the kitchen, 67, gray hair, grease-stained apron. He'd been at John's funeral. He took one look at me and went pale. "Elizabeth." "Take her home," he told Anna. "I'll cover your shift." "But Jerry." "Go, take care of your mother." Anna grabbed her purse and my bag wrapped her arm around my waist, and we walked 8 blocks through Charleston. She didn't ask questions, just held me up. Finally, I told her the same story I'd told Rachel. I was diagnosed 2 months ago, advanced stage. I've been in treatment. I had to sell everything to pay for therapy in Atlanta. $127,000. Her grip tightened. "I went to Los Angeles to see Rachel. I thought she'd help." "What did she say?" "She gave me $100 and a homeless shelter address." Anna stopped walking, right there on the sidewalk. Tears streamed down her face. "She what?" "She had a dinner reservation. She was busy." Anna pulled me close and held me while she cried. Then she took my hand and we kept walking. Her apartment was a 3rd-floor walk-up, 320 square feet, 1-room, bedroom, living room, kitchen, a bathroom the size of a closet, an old refrigerator that rattled, but it was clean, warm, hers. "You take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor." "Anna, no." "Mom!" She gripped my shoulders. "You're sick. You take the bed." At 12:30 a.m., she cooked for me. Shrimp and grits, John's recipe. I watched her move around that tiny kitchen, the way she added spices, the extra cheese, the dash of hot sauce that made it perfect. She set the bowl in front of me. I took one bite and had to close my eyes. It tasted exactly like his. "Good," she asked softly. "Perfect." We ate at her small table, 2 chairs, scratched wood, 1 uneven leg. Her hand never left mine. After she tucked me into her bed, the only bed with her only blanket. "Get some sleep, Mom. We'll figure this out in the morning." She kissed my forehead. I lay in the dark, wrapped in her blanket, the one she'd give up to sleep on the floor. Then I heard her slip into the bathroom. The door clicked shut. Her voice came through low and urgent. "Jerry, it's me. Can I pick up extra shifts, as many as you can give me?" A pause. "I need money, fast." My chest tightened. "I don't care what shifts, overnight, mornings, whatever. I just need to help my mom." I stared at the ceiling. What had I done? I'd wanted to test her love, to see if she'd sacrifice. But lying there in her bed, listening to her beg for extra work, I realized something terrifying. She would sacrifice everything, and I might not be able to stop her in time. The weekend passed like a dream I couldn't wake from. Friday through Sunday, May 24th to 26th. 3 days in Anna's 320 square foot apartment while she worked morning shifts, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then came home to cook to sit beside me, to tell stories about the diner and customers and her someday restaurant. Friday. Anna asked about the medical bills. I showed her the documents Charles had prepared. $8,365. Diagnostic tests, consultations, treatment plans. She studied them for a long time. Her finger traced the numbers, the hospital names, the dates. She didn't say anything, just folded the papers carefully and handed them back. Saturday. She took me to a free clinic on Meeting Street. A volunteer doctor examined me, asked questions I'd rehearsed answers for, wrote a prescription for pain medication. Anna paid $15 from her own pocket money she probably needed for groceries. On the walk home, she asked, "Mom, how much do you need total for the treatment?" I kept my voice steady. $45,000 for the experimental program in Atlanta. It's my only real chance. She nodded, didn't flinch at the number, just nodded. Sunday. She made Sunday dinner. Fried chicken collard greens, cornbread, the meal her father used to make every week. We ate at her small table, and for a moment I could almost pretend everything was normal. After dinner, she took my hands. "Mom, I need to tell you something. I talked to Jerry." My chest tightened. "Starting tomorrow night, I'm switching to graveyard shifts. Anna, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 7 days a week." Her voice was calm, determined. "They pay $18 an hour instead of $15. Plus, late-night tips are better. People are more generous when they're the only ones in the diner." She pulled out a notebook, showed me calculations in her neat handwriting. "In 6 weeks, I can save $4,000. It's not much, but it's a start. Then we figure out the rest." $4,000. 6 weeks of overnight shifts, 7 days a week. "No." I gripped her shoulders. "You'll destroy your health." She smiled. That smile. John's smile when he'd made up his mind about something and nothing could change it. "Mom, you gave me everything, literally everything. I can give up sleep for 6 weeks. Anna, please." "I already told Jerry yes, I start tomorrow night." I looked into her eyes, 28 years old, blue like her father's, full of nothing but pure love. No calculation, no hesitation, no doubt, just love. Inside my head, I was screaming, "Stop this now, call Charles, end it." But I needed to know, needed to see how far she would go, needed to understand what Rachel had refused to give. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. "Yes, I do." She squeezed my hands. "You do it for me. You have done it for me. My whole life." She stood and started clearing dishes. "Get some rest, Mom. I'm working the morning shift tomorrow, then I'll sleep in the afternoon before the overnight. We'll make this work." That night, Sunday night, I lay in her bed, the one she'd given up, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she'd start, graveyard shifts, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. every single night. For me, for a lie. I couldn't sleep. Monday night, 11 o'clock, May 27th. I watched Anna leave the apartment in her Jerry's Diner uniform. She turned at the door, waved, smiled, but I saw the shadows already forming under her eyes. Week 1, May 27th through June 2nd. The first 2 nights she maintained a routine. Home at 7 a.m., sleep until 1 p.m., 5 hours. Wake to cook for me, she insisted on cooking, wouldn't let me touch the stove. Then back to sleep from 3 to 6 p.m., another 3 hours. 8 hours total. Not enough, but survivable. I watched her move through those days like she was walking underwater. Slower, heavier. Nights 3 and 4 the weekend, the diner was busier. She didn't get home until 8:15 a.m. I stayed awake listening for her key in the lock, terrified something had happened. When she finally came in, she'd collapse into bed without eating. 7 hours of sleep. She started forgetting things. Left the door unlocked twice. Couldn't remember if she'd taken her vitamins. Nights 5 through 7, she picked up breakfast shifts, just a few hours, 7 to 10 a.m. Some days she worked straight through 11 p.m. to 10 a.m., 11 hours on her feet. "The breakfast tips are good, Mom," she said, eyes half closed. "Every bit helps." 5 to 6 hours of sleep a day. I saw her hands shake when she poured my coffee. Week 2, June 3rd through June 9th. Night 8, I woke at 3 a.m. Her side of the floor she'd been sleeping on blankets beside the bed was empty. 4:30, the door finally opened. She had dark marks on her wrist, purple fingerprints. What happened? Customer got a little handsy, had too much to drink. She tried to smile. Jerry kicked him out. I'm fine. But when she tried to unlock the bathroom door, her hands shook so badly she dropped the key twice. Night 10. She came home at 7:45 and collapsed on the couch, fully dressed. I knelt beside her and carefully removed her shoes. Her feet were swollen to twice their normal size. Her white socks had dark red stains where blisters had burst and bled through. I carried those socks to the bathroom and cried where she wouldn't hear me. By nights 12 through 14, she'd lost 8 pounds. Her uniform hung loose. Her face looked more sunken than mine, and I was supposed to be terminally ill. But she still smiled every morning. Only 2 more weeks, Mom. We're halfway there. Sunday, June 9th. At 6 p.m., someone knocked. A man in his 40s stood there holding a grocery bag. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Pete. I'm a regular at Jerry's. He held out the bag. Inside eggs, milk, bread, chicken. Real food. I've known Anna 3 years. She serves breakfast to my kids every Sunday. Remembers their names? My daughter's allergic to strawberries. Anna always remembers, always checks before serving anything. His voice cracked. This week I watched her fall asleep standing up while pouring coffee. She caught herself before the pot dropped, smiled like nothing happened. He met my eyes. Ma'am, she's destroying herself. I don't know your situation, but please, whatever this is, make her stop. I took the groceries, thanked him. After he left, I sat on the floor holding that bag and cried for 40 minutes. A stranger had brought us food because he could see what I was doing to my daughter. That night, Anna came home at 8 a.m. How much have you saved? I asked. She smiled, exhausted, proud. $2,100, right on track. $2,100. 14 nights of graveyard shifts. Bruises, bleeding feet, 8 pounds gone. And she thought we were on track. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I was. I was also destroying her. That night, Monday, June 10th, I lay in her bed staring at the ceiling. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. At 2:47 a.m., I made a decision. I had to see it for myself. I woke at 3 a.m. on Wednesday, June 12th. Anna had been at work for 4 hours. I pulled on my jacket and walked the 8 blocks to Jerry's Diner. The streets were empty, silent except for my footsteps and the distant hum of late-night traffic. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin. At 3:24, I stood outside the back window, the one that looked out on the dumpsters and the employee break area. Inside, I could see her. Anna was wiping down tables, moving like a robot, mechanical, slow. 2 men sat in the corner booth, 40s maybe, loud. One of them banged his glass on the table. Hey, sweetheart, another round. Anna carried 2 beers over. The one in the red shirt grabbed her wrist as she set the bottles down, pulled her toward him. Come on, give us a smile. She tried to pull away. He held tighter. His friend laughed. Jerry was in the kitchen. Couldn't see. I pressed my hand against the window, ready to go inside. Anna yanked free, stepped back, said something I couldn't hear. The man let go, still laughing. She walked away, rubbing her wrist. At 3:47, the back door opened. Anna stepped out, carrying a trash bag. She saw me. Her eyes went wide. Mom, what are you doing here? I couldn't sleep. I wanted to see you. She set down the bag and came over, glancing back at the diner. Mom, you shouldn't be walking around alone at this hour. Under the dim security light, I saw everything. Fresh bruises on her arm, purple fingerprints where that man had grabbed her, a small cut on her finger from a knife slipping while slicing lemons, probably. Red-rimmed eyes. She hadn't slept in 48 hours straight. She was trembling, not from cold, from exhaustion. I pulled her into my arms right there among the dumpsters at 3:52 in the morning. Mom, I'm okay, really, only 3 more weeks. I've already saved $2,100. By mid-July, I'll have $4,000. Then we figure out the rest. She pulled back her eyes, bright with plans. I can pick up dishwashing shifts at the Ordinary, that restaurant downtown. They pay $20 an hour. Or, she swallowed. I can sell my car. It's worth $8,000. That's $12,000 total. I put my hand over her mouth. No. But Mom, no more. Tears filled her eyes. "But you'll pass away." I cupped her face in my hands. "I would rather lose myself than watch you destroy yourself for me." "Mom, please, Anna, no more." She broke down. Right there by the dumpsters, she sobbed into my shoulder while I held her. After a moment, I walked her back inside, found Jerry in the kitchen. "She's sick, I'm taking her home." He took one look at her face and nodded. "Go, I'll handle it." We walked the 8 blocks back to her apartment. She leaned on me the whole way. At 4 a.m., I tucked her into bed, her bed, the one she'd given up for me. "Sleep, sweetheart, everything's going to be okay." "Promise." "I promise." Within minutes, she was asleep. The kind of sleep that looks like passing out. Deep. Desperate. I sat on the floor beside the bed and watched her breathe. Then I pulled out my phone. 4:17 a.m. I texted Charles 4 words. "It's time, end this." The next morning, I woke Anna at 2 p.m. She'd slept nearly 10 hours, the first real sleep she'd had in 2 weeks. When she opened her eyes, I was sitting beside the bed with tea. "Mom, what?" "I'm feeling better," I said. "Much better. I think the rest helped." I touched her hand. "You don't need to work graveyard shifts anymore." "But Mom, please, you've done enough." She argued. Of course she did. But I held firm, and finally she agreed to return to morning shifts. "I'll still save money," she insisted. "We'll figure it out." I nodded, let her believe that. Because in 3 days, everything would change. June 12th through 14th. Preparation. I texted Charles June 15th, Spoleto Legacy Gala, make it public. His response came quickly. "Are you certain this will destroy Rachel's career?" I typed back, "She destroyed it herself when she handed me $100. Friday, June 13th. Charles worked fast. Legal documents, the full estate breakdown, $105 million. Distribution plans. Video footage, Jerry had agreed to provide clips from the diner's security cameras. Anna during graveyard shifts, the bruises, the moment she nearly collapsed against the walk-in refrigerator, an invitation for Rachel VIP tickets to the Spoleto Legacy Gala, $500 each. Charity event, honoring Charleston philanthropists. Your attendance is requested. She'd come. I knew she would. Rachel never missed an opportunity to be seen. Saturday, June 14th. I went to Jasmine's salon on King Street. "Make me look like myself again," I told the stylist. She cut away the choppy, uneven style, shaped it into something elegant. $150. Charles paid. Professional makeup. Not the hollow, sallow look I'd been wearing, but color. Life. And a dress, Oscar de la Renta, $2,800, borrowed from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Navy blue. Simple. Powerful. When I looked in the mirror, CEO Elizabeth Hayes looked back. Anna came home from her morning shift and stopped in the doorway. "Mom, you look amazing." "I have one last thing to do," I said. That evening, I handed her a box. "Tomorrow night, there's a gala at Dock Street Theater. I need you to come with me." "But I don't have a dress." I gestured to the box. She opened it slowly. Inside, a navy dress. Simple, elegant. $120. Charles had picked it out. Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, this is too much." "You deserve it." She held the dress against herself, looking in the small mirror by the door. "Why are we going to a gala?" "You'll see." That night, I sat at Anna's small table with my laptop and wrote, 4 parts, 4 truths. Part 1, I faked terminal illness. Part 2, I tested my daughters. Part 3, the truth about John's passing, how Rachel missed his final days, how Anna stayed. Part 4, the will, the estate, the consequences. I wrote and rewrote until the words were exactly right, until they would cut the way they needed to. Sunday, June 15th, 7 p.m. Anna and I stood outside Dock Street Theater. The historic building glowed with lights. Luxury cars lined the street, women in gowns, men in tuxedos. Charleston's elite. Through the tall windows, I could see them inside. Politicians, doctors, lawyers, the people who ran this city. And Rachel. She'd flown in from Los Angeles. I'd seen her arrival on the guest list Charles sent me. She hadn't called, hadn't texted. Not once since the day she'd handed me $100 and suggested a homeless shelter. "Mom." Anna touched my arm. "Are you ready?" I looked at my youngest daughter in her navy dress, at the girl who'd given up Paris, who'd worked herself to breaking, who'd offered to sell her car. Then I looked through those windows at my eldest daughter, at the woman in designer clothes who'd given me pocket change. Yes, I said, I'm ready. Tonight, Rachel would learn what that $100 truly cost. If you're still here with me, comment 11 below so I know you're walking this journey all the way to the end. And let me ask you something. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you expose the truth in front of everyone? Or would you protect your family's name and stay silent? Tell me your choice in the comments, because what happens next will change everything. And before we move forward, please note that parts of the upcoming story include dramatized elements created for reflection and storytelling. If this style isn't for you, you're free to stop here. The room fell silent when my face appeared on the screens. 400 guests in evening gowns and tuxedos looked up from their champagne glasses. The ballroom of Dock Street Theater glittered with crystal chandeliers and gold trim. Politicians sat beside doctors. Lawyers chatted with real estate moguls. Charleston's elite gathered for the Spoleto Legacy Gala. And Rachel, front row VIP table, wearing an Eli Saab gown that cost $12,000, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. I stood on stage with a microphone in my trembling hand. Good evening, Charleston. My name is Elizabeth Hayes. Some of you know me as the founder of Hayes Properties. I paused, letting the name register. Tonight, I'm here as a mother. Confused glances, polite attention. 6 weeks ago, I did something terrible. My voice echoed through the sound system. I faked terminal illness. The whispers erupted immediately, a wave of shock rippling from table to table. Rachel shot to her feet, champagne flute falling from her hand and shattering on the floor. Her face went completely white. I didn't stop. I told my daughters I was dying, that I'd lost everything, my business, my money, my home. I wanted to see who would stand by me when I had nothing left. I nodded toward Charles at the back of the room. The first video began playing on the massive screens flanking the stage. Footage from my phone, Beverly Hills, the gleaming glass tower on Rodeo Drive. My voice narrated, I traveled to Los Angeles to see my eldest daughter. She's a plastic surgeon, very successful. I told her I needed help. The video showed Rachel's waiting room, the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the price list visible on the wall. She gave me $100. My voice was steady. And the address of a homeless shelter. Gasps throughout the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The second video started. Security footage from Jerry's Diner. Black and white, grainy, but clear enough. The timestamp read, May 27th, 3:15 a.m. Anna carried 3 plates, her movement slow, exhausted. Another clip bruises visible on her forearm where someone had grabbed her. Another her leaning heavily against the walk-in refrigerator door, eyes closed, then forcing herself upright to keep working. The timestamps rolled through 2 weeks, May 27th, May 30th, June 2nd, June 5th, June 9th, June 12th. 112 hours every week. People in the audience were crying now. I saw a woman cover her mouth with her hand. The third video played, the diner's back camera. June 12th, 3:52 a.m. Anna and me by the dumpsters, in the dim security light. Her voice came through the speakers. I can sell my car, Mom. It's worth $8,000. That gives us $12,000 total. The room was utterly silent. I looked directly at Rachel. She was still standing, frozen tears streaming down her face. My eldest daughter is Dr. Rachel Hayes, right there. I pointed. A plastic surgeon who charges $35,000 for a single facelift. Rachel's hands flew to cover her face. I paid $500,000 for her education. Johns Hopkins, medical school, every textbook, every apartment, every meal. My voice broke slightly. And when she thought I was dying, she gave me $100. I gestured to Anna beside me in her simple navy dress. My youngest daughter is Anna Hayes, a waitress at Jerry's Diner. She makes $15 an hour. Anna squeezed my hand. I paid $28,000 for her education, all I could afford during the recession. And she gave me 112 hours of work every week. Her health, her sleep, and offered to sell her car, the only valuable thing she owned. Rachel tried to move toward the exit. Mark grabbed her wrist and pulled her back down. "Sit," he hissed. She collapsed into her chair, shoulders shaking. I let the silence stretch. Tonight, I'm here to announce my estate decisions. How I'll distribute $105 million. Murmurs throughout the crowd. $105 million. But there's one more truth to tell first. I paused. About a man who saw this coming 6 years ago. The room remained silent as I began again. Anna's hand gripped mine so tight I felt her pulse racing. 6 years ago, my husband John Hayes passed away. The same illness I faked to test you all tonight. I let that settle. During his final weeks in early June, I called my eldest daughter 17 times. 17. She was in Los Angeles at a medical association gala, building her network, making connections. My throat tightened, but I pushed through. She texted, "Can't leave Mom, important clients." Rachel came home 3 days after her father passed. She missed his last words, his last breath, everything. A new video appeared on the screens. Footage from my phone, shaky intimate. John in our bed at home June 2nd, 6 years earlier. Hospice equipment surrounding him. The video showed me holding his hand, my face wet with tears. "She's not coming." John's voice was barely audible through the speakers. "She made her choice, Elizabeth. People show you who they are. Believe them." The camera shifted slightly. Anna was visible asleep in a chair beside the bed, her head resting on the mattress, her hand wrapped around John's free hand. "That one," John whispered, looking at her. "She already knows." The ballroom filled with the sound of crying. Not polite sniffles, deep, wrenching sobs from people who understood what they were witnessing. Rachel stood her chair, scraping loudly. "Stop it, please!" I met her eyes. Before John left us, he wrote a will. He asked me to do this to test our daughters before distributing his estate. My voice was steady now. He said, "Give them a chance to prove they remember what I taught them." I turned to Charles. "Tonight, I honor his final wish." Charles stepped onto the stage with a leather folder. The screens behind us displayed the numbers as he read. The estate of John and Elizabeth Hayes totals $105 million. Hayes Properties real estate portfolio, $78 million. Investment accounts, $22 million. Additional holdings, $5 million. Whispers rippled through the crowd. $105 million. Distribution: Anna Hayes receives $75 million. Full ownership of Hayes Properties. The Charleston family residence valued at $3.2 million. Seed funding for John's Table restaurant. No conditions. Anna gasped beside me. Her legs buckled slightly. I steadied her. Rachel Hayes receives $15 million contingent upon 3 conditions to be completed within 2 years. 200 hours of community service at medical clinics and homeless shelters. 1 year of family therapy. A written apology to Anna Hayes read publicly. Failure to meet these terms results in the $15 million being donated to Charleston Free Clinic. Rachel's face was buried in her hands now. Her shoulders shook violently. $10 million to charitable organizations, $5 million to Charleston Free Clinic, $2 million to the Jerry's Diner Employee Fund, $3 million to Hospice Care Services. $5 million covers legal and tax obligations. Charles closed the folder. The numbers glowed on the screens behind us. $75 million to the daughter who gave everything. $15 million to the daughter who gave $100. The silence was deafening. Then Anna released my hand. She walked down the stage steps through the crowd of stunned faces, past the tables of Charleston's elite in their $1,000 gowns and designer suits. She stopped in front of Rachel. Rachel looked up, her makeup destroyed her $12,000 dress, wrinkled from clutching it. "Anna, Anna pulled her into an embrace. "I forgive you." The microphone picked up the whisper. It echoed through the ballroom. Rachel collapsed against her younger sister, sobbing. "I don't deserve it. I don't deserve any of this." Anna held her tighter. "That's why it's called grace." 3 months later, I stood in Anna's new kitchen. Not the 320-square-foot studio where she'd given up her bed and worked herself to exhaustion. A 2-story townhouse in South of Broad purchased with her inheritance, with marble counters, a 6-burner stove, and windows overlooking a small garden where magnolias bloomed. September. The air carried the salt smell of Charleston Harbor mixed with the scent of simmering stock. Anna stirred a pot of shrimp and grits, adjusting John's recipe with the confidence of someone who'd finally found her calling. Beside her sat the leather notebook pages marked with additions in her own handwriting. The 3 months since the gala had transformed everything. In July, Anna had walked into Jerry's diner for the last time as an employee. Jerry had hugged her so tight she couldn't breathe, tears streaming down his weathered face. "You deserve this, baby girl. Your daddy would be so proud." The $2 million employee fund had changed Jerry's life, too. He'd renovated the diner, extended hours to 24/7, and raised every worker's wage by $3 an hour. Last week, he'd told me he was hiring 4 new servers. By August, Anna had enrolled in Le Cordon Bleu's online program and started classes at Charleston Culinary Institute. She'd tested 47 recipes from John's notebook, tweaking spices and techniques until each dish told a story. September brought John's table. 75 seats on King Street, exposed brick walls lined with framed pages from John's notebook. Southern comfort food priced from $12 to $28. Opening night had drawn a 3-hour wait and sold every plate. I'd watched Anna move through that dining room like she was born to it. Rachel's transformation had been harder, more painful. The video reached 8.3 million views within a week. Headlines screamed, "Plastic surgeon gave desperate mother $100. Her Beverly Hills practice hemorrhaged client 70% gone in 10 days. The California Medical Board launched an ethics investigation. They found no grounds for license revocation. She hadn't violated medical protocols, but her reputation was ashes. By late July, she'd closed Beverly Hills. Mark had packed their apartment without complaint. "We'll rebuild," he'd said simply, "together." Rachel opened a small practice in Charleston, reconstructive surgery for burn survivors, accident victims, people who needed healing more than beauty. She reserved 40% of her schedule for pro bono work. Every Saturday, she spent 8 hours at Charleston Free Clinic, suturing lacerations, removing suspicious moles, holding the hands of patients who couldn't afford care elsewhere. She'd logged 80 hours toward her required 200. Tonight was September 15th, our first real family dinner since everything changed. Anna's dining table seated 8, though only 4 chairs were filled. Handmade walnut still smelling faintly of wood polish. Me at one end. Anna and Rachel on opposite sides. Mark beside Rachel. The meal was pure John. Shrimp and grits with his secret spice blend. She crab soup rich with cream. Pecan pie cooling on the windowsill. After we ate, Rachel stood. Her hands trembled as she unfolded a piece of paper, the required apology letter. "Anna," her voice cracked. "I'm sorry I let success make me forget what Dad taught us. I'm sorry I measured wealth in dollars instead of sacrifice." Tears spilled over. "I'm sorry I gave Mom $100 when you gave her everything." She looked up, mascara running. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll spend my life earning it." Anna rose and took her sister's hands. "We're family. That's what matters." They embraced. Mark wiped his eyes. I couldn't speak through the lump in my throat. Afterward, we moved to the porch. The sun was setting over Charleston Harbor, painting the water in golds and pinks. Rachel leaned her head on Anna's shoulder. Anna rested against her. 2 sisters who'd been continents apart now breathing in sync. I remembered John's words from 6 years ago. They'll find their way back. It'll hurt, but they'll heal. He'd been right. We were becoming a family again. Not what we'd been before. Something rebuilt from broken pieces. But family nonetheless. June 8th, 1 year since the gala. The anniversary of the day we lost him. 7 years now. We stood together at Magnolia Cemetery under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The 3 of us, me, Anna, Rachel, holding white magnolias, the kind John always brought home on Fridays. The kind that bloomed in our backyard every spring. The kind that now grew outside every location of John's table. Anna placed hers first. Her hands were steadier than they'd been a year ago. Steadier than they'd been that night. She came home at 4:30 in the morning with bruises on her wrists and blood on her socks. Steadier than the night she offered to sell her car, her only asset worth $8,000 to save a mother who was lying to her. She cleared her throat. Dad, I wanted to tell you about the restaurants. Her voice was quiet but strong. John's table has 2 locations now, Charleston on King Street, Savannah on River Street. 45 employees total. Most of them are single parents. Some are veterans. A few were homeless before we hired them. We made $1.8 million this year. But that's not the number that matters. She paused, wiping her eyes. The number that matters is this. We've served 38,000 meals on Pay What You Can Sundays. 38,000 times someone sat at a table and didn't have to choose between dignity and hunger. That's what you taught me, Dad. That's what I'm building. She smiled through her tears. And tonight we're heading to Columbia. Location number 3 opens this fall. Rachel stepped forward next. She placed her magnolias beside Anna's. Her hands shook slightly. She'd lost weight this past year. Not from stress, but from work, physical, exhausting, meaningful work. She looked at the headstone for a long moment before she spoke. Dad, I finished my 200 hours. All of them at the Charleston Free Clinic. I met a man there last month, 63 years old, homeless for 20 years. He had scars all over his face from a fire. 3rd-degree burns. He told me he stopped looking in mirrors 15 years ago. Her voice cracked. I did 8 hours of reconstructive surgery, pro bono. When I took the bandages off, he cried. He said, I look like myself again. And I finally understood what you meant when you said healing isn't just about medicine. It's about seeing people. I placed my magnolias last, white petals against gray stone. I didn't have a speech prepared. I just had the truth. John, you were right about everything. They did break, they did heal, and they found their way back to each other. Anna opened the notebook, the one John had given her 6 years ago in the hospital. The one with recipes for shrimp and grits, she-crab soup, pecan pie. The one that ended with a letter he'd written to me dated 2 days before he passed away. She read the last page aloud. Elizabeth, if you're reading this, it means the girls have come back to each other. You tested them. I knew you would. But here's the test that matters. Did you learn what I learned? Wealth isn't what you earn. It's what you give when giving costs you everything. It's not the 105 million. It's the girl who sleeps on the floor so her mother can have the bed. That's the inheritance that lasts. We walked back to the car together, Anna's arm around Rachel, Rachel's head on Anna's shoulder, me behind them watching 2 daughters who'd been strangers learn to be sisters again. Tonight we'd drive to Columbia to scout the 3rd location. Tomorrow we'd start building something new. And every day after that, we'd prove John right one more time. She was right. She'd always been right. That fall, John's Table opened its 3rd location in Columbia, South Carolina. 200 guests filled Main Street for the grand opening. Local press, food critics, politicians, and us, the family who'd built this from love and broken pieces. 1 year since the gala. 3 restaurants now. Charleston's King Street, where it all started. Savannah's River Street, overlooking the water. And now Columbia's Main Street in the heart of South Carolina's capital. 62 employees across 3 locations. 40% were single parents, veterans, people rebuilding after homelessness. Anna had insisted on it. Dad would have, she'd said simply. Each location ran the same special programs Anna had designed. Pay What You Can Sundays. If you couldn't afford a meal, you worked 2 hours washing dishes or bussing tables. 10% of all profits went directly to employees as bonuses. $50,000 a year funded culinary scholarships for any employee who wanted to learn. Revenue had hit $2.3 million in year 1. Projections showed $4.5 million for year 2. Charleston City Paper had named us Best New Restaurant 2025. Food and Wine called Anna a rising star of Southern cuisine. But the numbers weren't why we were here. Anna, Rachel, and I stood before the entrance. Above the door hung a bronze plaque Anna had commissioned. John's Table, founded in memory of John Hayes, 1967 to 2019, where love is the first ingredient and everyone has a seat. Anna cut the ribbon with kitchen shears from John's old set. The door opened. The first customer to walk through was a man I hadn't seen in over a year. Gray hair, weathered face, but standing straighter now. Clean clothes, clear eyes. Luis. The homeless man from the LA Metro bus who'd told me about his daughter, the lawyer in New York, he hadn't spoken to in 6 years. He saw me and his face crumpled. "Elizabeth." He crossed the restaurant and pulled me into an embrace. "You saved my family. I saw your story, the video went everywhere. I called my daughter that same week." A woman in her 30s stood behind him, tears streaming. "I'm Rosa, Luis's daughter. I saw what you did, how you tested your daughters, and I realized I'd failed my own father's test." She wiped her eyes. "We talk every week now. He's living with me in New York. Thank you for reminding me what matters." After the opening rush settled, we sat at the corner table, the first piece of furniture Anna had chosen for the original location, a round table walnut with 8 chairs. Room for family. Room for strangers who might become family. The menu sat before us. John's forgiveness bowl, Rachel's redemption salad. Anna had named it that, making Rachel laugh until she cried. Elizabeth's second chance pie. Rachel raised her iced tea. A toast to Dad who designed the test, to Mom who had the courage to execute it, to Anna who showed us what love actually means. Anna lifted her glass. To family, the one we're born into and the one we choose to rebuild. I raised mine last. To John. He said wealth is measured by what we give. Tonight, looking at you both, I'm the richest woman alive. We drank, we ate, we laughed. As the sun set through Columbia's windows, painting everything gold, I watched my daughters. Rachel, whose reputation bore scars but whose hands held Anna's across the table. Anna, whose dream had come true but who still hugged her sister every single morning. I opened John's notebook one final time, to the page he'd written for me, alone, hidden at the very back. Elizabeth, if you're reading this, you did it. You broke them to rebuild them. That's not cruelty, that's love. True wealth isn't $105 million. It's 2 daughters who choose each other after everything. You gave them money, I gave them the test. Together, we gave them the truth. I closed the book, looked up at the ceiling where the evening light cast shadows. I saw 3 women reflected in the restaurant windows. Not perfect, but whole. If you're listening to this story, ask yourself, if you lost everything tomorrow, who would stand by you? Not because they have to, because they choose to. That's the real test. And that, my friends, is the only wealth that matters. Looking back now, I see a woman who almost destroyed everything she loved to prove a point. That's what family drama stories do. They teach us the hardest lessons when we're least prepared to learn them. If you're reading this as one of my grandma stories, please learn from my mistakes. Don't test the people you love. Don't wait for a crisis to show them what they mean to you. I spent 6 weeks pretending to face the end, watching my daughters reveal who they truly were. Anna gave everything, her health, her safety, her one asset, without hesitation. Rachel gave $100 and directions to a homeless shelter. The contrast nearly broke us all. But here's what family drama stories teach us: they're not about who fails the test. They're about whether we're brave enough to heal afterward. My grandma's stories always taught me that wealth was something you built with your hands and protected with your life. I was wrong. Real wealth is measured by who stands beside you when everything else is gone. It's Anna teaching Rachel to cook on Sunday mornings. It's Rachel performing 8-hour surgeries for veterans who can't pay. It's 3 women who were shattered learning to be whole again. The Bible says, test everything, hold fast to what is good. I tested my daughters, yes, but I also tested myself and nearly failed. Another verse says, love bears all things. Anna taught me that. Rachel is learning it, and I'm still trying to believe I deserve it. So here's my advice from these grandma stories: don't be like me. Don't gamble with your family's trust. Don't sacrifice your health or sanity or soul to teach someone a lesson. Most family drama stories end with regret. Mine almost did. Just love them, forgive them, stand with them. This content includes dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.
2만 원이야? 1인분에 2만 원이 미친 거 아니야? 갈비를? 돼지를? 너무 비싸게 파는데? 오빠가 10,000원에 팔았었어. 250g에.
너무 비싸다.
아, 핸드폰 저거 살려야 되는데 여기서 하면 되나?
여기서부터 먼저 살릴까? 핸드폰부터?
돈 들어가나 근데 여기?
얼른 들어가.
아, 밖으로는 그 유심 그냥 있는 거 쓰면 되나? SK 거? 안 바꿔도 돼 이거는?
일단 물어봐야지 살릴 수 있냐고.
일로 들어가도 되잖아.
안녕하세요. 뭐라고 얘기해야 되나?
또 살릴라.
방송폰 여기에 SK 유심이 들어있는데
그냥 써도 돼요?
해지를 했잖아.
해지를 했거든요.
해지를 했는데 이 유심을 쓸 수 있나 물어보라고.
네, 물어볼.
유심을 쓸 그게 무슨 말씀이시죠?
요 안에 유심은 들어있어요. 근데 해지를 했는데
SK
쓸 수 있냐요?
쓸 수 있죠. 쓸 수 있는데 그걸 대리점 같은 거 따로 해야 돼요.
여긴 안 돼요?
그렇죠. 왜냐면은 이게 한번 해지가 된 유심이기 때문에 저희가 살릴 수가 없는 거고
아,
대리점 가서 등록을 다시 하고 살려야 돼요.
돈 드나요?
네?
비용이 발생할까 그럼?
비용 발생은 따로 하진 않죠. 어차피 뭐
아,
필름
그럼
한 번만.
발생하지 않고.
여기 저번에 저 후기 작성해서 했는데.
근데 요거 필름이라는 저희
아
필름
괜찮아요.
하거든요.
그냥 애기가 자꾸 던져가지고.
15% 맞으시죠?
네, 15%.
안 되겠다. 아, TV 일단 끄고 이따가 다시 키자. 알았지? 이따 보자고.
한시 출근.